So now, without further ado, inviting our next team from Ipsos and ITC Foods around the topic enhancing consumer engagement with technology, transforming surveys into interactive experiences.
Hi everyone, a very good afternoon. We have Natasha here from the Ipsos team and I am Saloni from ITC. And today together we are going to take you through our chocolates track, which has been going on since the track has been going on since the last 5 years. And since this was a chocolates track, it has a more universal TG. We go to younger as well as older audiences. Because we especially go to kids, at the inception itself, we had decided that we'll gamify the track. So it has been gamified in the last 5 years. That was the way it was run, and the script was completely online. This was also a step towards adopting towards the latest technology that was available at that time. However, over time, especially after COVID, we started facing certain challenges with consumer productivity during our interviews. Say, for example, there were data losses. We saw a lot of consumer dropouts. And these challenges, when we diagnosed them further, we found out that there were two main reasons why this was happening. One was that the consumer itself had changed. This was now a consumer who had completely adopted digital in their way of life. They were used to having digital things at their fingertips. And so when a script took time to load, or certain questions were longer than they were used to, consumers were losing interest in the survey. That was one. And second, of course, was as we tend to do with tracks, we had added a lot of tag-ons, ads, and enhanced heavier HD images to be able to run it. So because of this, we were facing productivity issues. And then when we tried to table all the solutions for it, we figured that we'll have to change a lot of things in the track in order to solve for these problems. And then came the biggest challenge of all, that if I change things in a track that has been going on for half a decade, how is it going to change my data trends? So this is with this context, we will delve deeper into how we face challenges and manage to overcome most of them.
So this pressing need where we had to adapt and scale our approach, coupled with apprehensions what will happen when we do any changes, made us take a step back. So we stepped back to chisel and refine our current approach in much more planned manner, which would help us enhance consumer engagement. So what we did was, when we are working on having a technology, we worked towards having a technology which was seamless, but also ensured that it is scalable enough. Given we all know that high-end gamification requires continuous, stable internet connection, which is still a challenge across multiple cities, so this step became crucial for us. Also, given our biggest concern that if we make any changes, what would happen to data trend, we then took measured step-by-step approach so that to ensure there's no drastic changes which is happening. Now, using these three concerns, what we did was we laid down 3 golden guidelines for us. The first one followed the philosophy, every good thing takes time. So what we did was we gave ourselves realistic time frame. We took around 3 months to do all these changes gradually over time. The second was work to have an adaptable script, a script which could run on both offline and online mode. This would actually ensure seamless administration, irrespective of internet connection across different cities. Lastly, there was thorough monitoring. Vigilant monitoring to ensure that any element which is causing any disruption is weeded out and there is continuous seamless flow which is happening. Now these 3 pillars actually became the core of the foundation, on basis of which we actually created 2 pillars on which entire scaling was hinged onto. The first one being retain. Under retain, what we did was we retained all the elements from our current gamified track which were successful in engaging consumers. The second pillar became evolve, which was incorporating all the elements as per latest technology. We'll take you through this pillar. The biggest change what we did over here was shortening, pruning and trimming down the lengthy questions to make it much more concise and precise. This would actually aid in easier self-completion, also minimal interview involvement. Now, given our current gamified script worked for both kids as well as adults, all these changes were done for both the scripts. The other change which we did was introduction of animated and pictorial scales. These were done so that to make all the questions intuitive and self-explanatory. Next, we did was changing of the entire background. We gave it much more a game-like experience. This was to increase consumer engagement, at the same time retaining similarity versus our ongoing track. Last but not the least, and the most significant change which we did was to have an agile script. A team at Ipsos worked on creating a program which helped create a customized resource bank within each device. This resource bank stored all the elements which were required during their interview. So, during the course of an interview, this resource bank helped in fetching all the elements directly, thereby significantly reducing the dependency on internet to fetch all elements from online servers. What we'll do is we'll quickly take you through a quick snapshot of how this customized approach was administered amongst one of our younger age group. So here what we can see, the kid can easily maneuver through the scripts. It's easy for him to actually drag and drop, key in the responses, whatever he wants to fill in. There's minimal or close to no interviewer involvement in this. During the course of this pilot which we had done, we ourselves did multiple field visits to see how this entire script was moving and how the process was going on. We can see how the kid is actively engaged throughout the process of keying in, giving his responses.
So with these changes in place, we did an extensive pilot exercise to make sure that everything was in place and that the data trend wasn't really hampered. And luckily for us, when the changes were implemented and we did that pilot exercise, we monitored it extensively, almost microscopically, because tracks are sacrosanct, right? And we found that there was no significant difference in our funnel or imagery scores. The data trend was actually stable. And over and above that, the main things that we got out of it was one, a shorter length of interview. Second was the consumer was much more engaged in the survey while taking it. These two things leading to increased productivity, which actually improved by 30%. And our key learning from this exercise was that adopting technology once is not enough. Like we continuously upgrade our phones and softwares, we need to upgrade our methodologies as well to meet the changing consumer patterns and needs and what they're seeing, because they're, as I said, the digitally adopted audience was more used to seeing graphics and visual stimulus, and which is why we had to adopt our track to that. So that is it from us. I would really like to thank you, MRSI, for this opportunity and the Ipsos team for partnering with us to this. Thank you.
What is the next change you expect in tracks to make it more effective?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
What is the next change you expect in tracks to make it more effective?
Thank you for the question. So what the biggest learning for us was that in track, there has to be continuous change which you have to do. Most important is to engaging your consumer. Gone are those days when we used to have those lengthy questions. So any change which we have to do is work towards engaging consumers more so that it's much more relevant for them, so that we get richer responses from them, which gives us valuable insights.
Do you think kids understand the track questionnaire wordings 5 to 6 years old? Basically, do 5 to 6 year old kids understand the questionnaire wordings?
So the target group for our track was from 8 year onwards. It was not the younger audience below 8.
The next question is, what was the key incentive for the kid to fill the survey?
The incentive here was the game for them. So entire objective was Kids these days, we know, actually play games. They are more used to phones rather than anything. So any game you give it to them and they'll happily answer. So what we had done was we had different levels and they used to get rewards after each level was completed in terms of stars and brownie points. So the entire transition and movement was as a game, which kept them engaged.
How did we measure the engagement rate here in the study?
Okay. Okay, so for engagement rate, what we did was we did continuous, so during the entire course of pilot activity, we had done multiple visits ourselves to see how it is going through. And there when we could see that the role of interviewer, how it was changing, what was his contribution to this entire approach, that helped us measure. Also, when we were monitoring the data, we could see there. So when you see engagement, we can see how keenly and deeply the respondent is involved into rather than just moving faster ahead. So as you could see in the video, the kid was actively engaged, not seeing anything else, was doing and keying responses. That also was a good measure to help us measure engagement.
A lot more questions on, but we'll have to think the time has been extended, but okay. One last question. How transferable is this methodology to other adult categories? Other categories, basically.
It is, and as the question rightly itself said, it also depends upon the category, because if you have to have gamification, you need to see how it is relevant to the particular category. But yes, it can be adopted. You need to have those games, those elements which is relevant to the target audience for the particular category.
What's the length of the survey finally and retention rate?
So the final length of the survey was around 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes was the length which came down to, given how quickly and easily they were able to handle it and answer all the questions. And by retention, you say, if you mean, so when we had done the pilot versus both online and offline, we actually saw that by moving to this offline approach which we had followed, there was close to 90-100% retention because everybody could key in. There was no dropouts because of network connectivity issues or loading of scripts. So that ease was there, and a respondent could fill in all the survey, complete the entire survey.
The last question, I guess, how did you validate the responses coming through this gamified method? In other words, how do you know that responses that kids giving are true?
Okay. So during this extensive pilot, when we had two modules running parallelly. One was our current approach and one was a pilot approach, so that it could help us measure how our current approach and if there is any deviation in the data or not. So we moved quickly through the slide, but you could see in the data we had shown offline and online mode. So both modes, one is our current approach and new approach, was going simultaneously, which actually helped us measure at each and every week or month how's the trend moving, and we could also, which could give us an assurance that whatever we have collected is correct and it's not wrong or incorrect.
Just to add to that as well, because we had a long-term trended data, we could also kind of match and look at how the trends were going and whether they were in the similar direction in the parallel and the pilot run.
I think one more question. Decision makers are usually mothers. How would kids response help in this case? I think the question is not framed all that well, but decision makers are usually mothers.
No, so for chocolates, kids are also decision makers. A lot of times, kids are sent to get something and they end up buying chocolates with the change that they have. So that's not. Thank you.